Hi, welcome to the GRE Quick Start Crash Course. In this video, we'll be covering the argument task, which comes within your analytical writing section. I've already covered the issue task in another video. Be sure to go check that out if you need some help. The argument task is the second section of your GRE exam, and it lasts for half an hour. Your entire analytical writing section is 1 hour long. Half an hour for the issue task and half an hour for the argument task. Here you will be given one paragraph to read where the author presents some sort of conclusion based on a few assumptions or some kind of data. And your job is to analyze this argument. Your job is to see how strong or how weak it is, how sensible his assumptions are, and what kind of data or what kind of statistics could enhance or weaken the author's argument. So I've divided this crash course into two parts. In the first video, we'll go over the general instructions for this task. We'll cover how to prepare and how long to spend on preparation. We'll look at how to properly divide your 30 minutes. And we will understand the ways in which the exam or ETS could ask you to analyze the argument. They do it in different kinds of ways. There are different instruction prompts. We'll go over all of those. In part 2 of this video series, we'll deep dive into understanding the kinds of flaws that you could address in your essay. I'll tell you about the format of the essay that I followed and the one I think makes most sense. And finally, we'll go over two questions. We'll understand how to list flaws, we'll understand how to draft the essay, we'll look at two sample questions, and we'll kind of go over the entire essay. Okay, so let's dive in. The argument task is the second section on the GRE. It'll come after a 1-minute break following your issue task. The total score that you get for both essays is 6. Both essays will be separately graded out of 6, and the average of both the scores will be taken for your final AWA score. So take the 1-minute break and completely clear your head out after the issue task. This is a completely fresh question, and you should try and forget about the issue task completely. You'll be given 6 sheets of rough paper, which you can replace once they're over. You should use these sheets to jot down your ideas and the general essence of your essay before beginning. So, your job is to analyze the argument given by the author. Your job is to find faults in his assumptions, talk about what kind of data would help solidify these assumptions, or what kind of data would help weaken these assumptions, so on and so forth, depending on your instruction prompt. Okay, so coming to the preparation for this section, you'll first need to know what is asked of you. Not all argument task questions are the same. There are 8 different types of instruction prompts that you can get at the end of the argument. I'll discuss those 8 at the end of this video. So that covers the first point, which is understanding the instruction prompt before actually preparing. The second thing that you need to do is understand the kinds of flaws that are usually present in any logical reasoning question. Those I'll take you over in the next video. Now, if you're aiming for a really high score, like a 5, a 5.5 or a 6, you should try and practice at least 2 to 3 complete essays. Finally, the good part is that ETS has released all of the possible questions on its website. I'll link to that in the description. So if you're aiming for a 5, a 5.5 or a 6, you should totally try and go over as many topics as possible and get an idea of what you're actually up against. While preparing, if you come across a question which you don't know how to tackle, for example, you can talk to your friends, your peers, you can look up those essays online, you can get comfortable with even the difficult topics. Nothing should surprise you on test day. Let's talk about how to divide your time while writing the argument task. You have 30 minutes to jot down an essay with 4 to 5 paragraphs. So what you should do is take 5 to 8 minutes to read the topic a few times. Read it repeatedly and really understand the argument. After that, identify the assumptions that the author is making, and depending on the question type that you get, maybe think about the evidence or the questions that need answering, or think about any alternative explanations, depending on what kind of question prompt that you get. We'll be covering that in just a bit. After that, take around 20 minutes to write down the essay. 20 to 23 minutes. And in the last 2 minutes, go through the essay and get rid of any glaring grammatical mistakes or any glaring spelling mistakes. That's at max what you're going to be able to do in the last 2 to 3 minutes. Uh, at the 15-minute mark, I would suggest taking a 1 minute break and reading through the essay that you've written so far. This is what I did, and that really helped me because I was able to move paragraphs up and down, kind of logically arrange my thought process. Do so at the 15-minute mark. Okay, so I just want you to take a look at this example to understand what I mean when I say question prompt or instruction prompt. Each argument task is of this form. First, they'll give you an argument and then they'll give you an instruction. The instruction text will determine how you'll have to frame the essay. So, for this particular essay, the instruction text says write a response in which you discuss what specific evidence is needed to evaluate the argument and explain how this evidence would weaken or strengthen the argument. So, this particular instruction prompt asks you to discuss the evidence that would help evaluate the argument better. Let's take a look at all the possible instructions that you could be faced with in the actual exam. Here's a list of all possible instructions that you would face in the actual GRE exam. This is it. It won't come out of this. Keep in mind that no matter what the question type is, your planning phase where you take down the notes, that should pretty much be the same in all cases. This will enable you to write a proper, wholesome essay, no matter what instruction type that you get. So all these instruction types in green, the first 6, they all mean the same thing. They ask you to examine the extra evidence or the questions that the author needs to answer that will help evaluate his argument better. They're all just worded differently. For example, some talk about the author's recommendation, some talk about the author's advice, conclusion, prediction. They all mean the same thing. All of these questions pretty much mean the same thing, and they constitute a majority of your argument task topics. So the chances of you getting one of these prompts is higher than the other two. Okay, the prompt in blue is slightly different. It asks you to think of an alternative explanation other than the one the author provides to explain all the facts that the author has presented. Luckily, there are only 11 such questions. So this is I feel like this topic is a little tricky. So what you can do is you can go over all of these topics on the ETS website and have a game plan and understand how you'll tackle these types of questions. There are only 11. It'll take you hardly half an hour to go over all of them and kind of make a plan. Okay, the final type of prompt in brown asks you to examine the assumptions that the author makes. For this prompt, you have to list the assumption that he makes and then poke holes in his assumption. If you wish, you could go over and above and mention a few questions that these arguments don't answer, which is technically what the first 6 prompts are asking you to do. And then you're supposed to kind of elaborate on how the argument weakens if these assumptions are wrong. So that's all for now. We've covered a lot in this video. Join me in the next video and we'll take a look at 2 sample questions and we'll understand what kinds of flaws usually occur in these logical arguments, and we'll kind of go over a general format structure that you can follow. Okay, thank you for watching. See you. Bye.